subcommittee has had with outside witnesses since 2010. We felt it was important to hear from witnesses in this open hearing on the front end of our 2018 process. So we look forward to hearing the testimony today and hope to incorporate the witnesses' comments and concerns into our end product. Our first hearing this morning, we'll hear from Congressman James McGovern and Congressman Randy Holkren. Congressman McGovern's from Massachusetts, Mr. Holkren's from Illinois. We'll also hear from Joshua Taber, President of Civic Impulse LLC, Kevin Kosar, Vice President of the R Street Institute, Daniel Schumann, Policy Director of Demand Progress, and I'm going to mispronounce this, so I'm going to look back at my notes here. Someone wrote it down for me. Keith Kupperschmidt, Chief Executive Office, Copyright Alliance. We nail that? Good. In a moment, we'll begin with the joint testimony from Congressman McGovern and Congressman Holkren. I know he's at another hearing, so he may join us in a little bit. First, ask that each of the individuals testifying in front of the subcommittee limit your opening remarks to 5 minutes. Your complete statements will be entered into the record without objection. I'd like to yield to Ranking Member Ryan for any opening remarks he would like to make.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Let me first associate myself with your remarks and let you know how excited I am for us to kick off this committee. This is our first hearing of the fiscal 2018 appropriations process, and I'm grateful for the privilege to be here with you, work in a bipartisan way to make some good things happen. While this subcommittee may not appropriate the most money, we do appropriate for the agencies and offices in our jurisdiction. They're among the most essential to the operation of our small d democracy and our small d democratic system. That's why these decisions we make as we write the 2018 legislative branch bill matter to all of us. Today, we're going to hear testimony about the proper role of the Congressional Research Service, an in-house think tank whose nonpartisan experts help ensure we are making informed decisions as we write the nation's law. And I know we all utilize CRS a lot. And we will hear about the activities of a Congressional Commission on Human Rights that serves as a resource for members of Congress making foreign policy decisions in a world where not everyone shares our values. We will also be joined by a representative of the creative community whose intellectual property is a critical part of what drives our economy. He'll have the opportunity to weigh in on the operation of the Copyright Office from the perspectives of artists, software developers, authors, and other creators. And as we are all witnessing with the fiscal year 2017 Omnibus Appropriations Bill on the House floor today, making decisions about how to spend taxpayer money, on how to give the people who elected us the most bang for their buck, isn't always easy. The more information we have to work with, the better our product will be. And so I thank all of our witnesses for joining us and sharing their thoughts on how money should and shouldn't be spent in the legislative branch of government. With that, I yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Ryan. I appreciate your opening comments. We're now going to call upon the Honorable James P. McGovern from Massachusetts for his 5 minutes of comments. Sir, you're recognized.
Thank you very much. Chairman Yoder and Ranking Member Ryan, I'm here today in my capacity as the Democratic co-chair of the Tom Lantos Human Rights Commission. My colleague, Randy Holkren, the Republican co-chair, I think hopes to be here. He's in another markup. He may show up, but if not, he told me that I speak for him.
Okay.
So,
on all matters.
Yeah. So let me begin by thanking you for giving us this opportunity to testify, and we deeply appreciate the courtesy. We're here to request that language be added to the fiscal year 2018 legislative branch appropriations bill to provide $230,000 for salaries and expenses for professional staff for the Tom Lantos Human Rights Commission, an official bipartisan body of the House of Representatives. We know that this request is unusual, but our situation is unusual. Although the commission was established with the unanimous support of the House in 2008 and has been renewed by every Congress since then, no funds have been specifically designated or appropriated for the commission's operation. And here's the background. The commission has its origins in the Bipartisan Congressional Human Rights Caucus, founded in 1983 by John Porter, a Republican from Illinois, and Tom Lantos, a Democrat from California, the only Holocaust survivor to serve in the United States Congress. It was after the death of Tom Lantos that the initiative was taken to institutionalize a unique bipartisan entity in the House of Representatives focused on human rights and to name it in his honor. The Commission has a broad global mandate to educate and advise members and staff and to promote international human rights in a nonpartisan manner. In carrying out its mandate, the Commission is authorized to use the resources of the Committee on Foreign Affairs. We would like to take this opportunity to express our appreciation to the Foreign Affairs Committee for funding administrative expenses for the Commission, including office space, supplies, computers, and the cost of video recording and transcription of hearings. These resources are invaluable and very important to the Commission's success. But what is missing is funding for professional staff. The establishment resolution provided that professional staff members nominated by the co-chairs would be appointed by the Chairman of Foreign Affairs. To ensure that the Commission staff would not burden the committee nor interfere with the committee's own staffing needs, the resolution specified that full-time staff appointed for the Commission would not be counted in determining the total number of professional staff members the committee may hire under House rules. But as I mentioned before, no funds were specifically designated or appropriated for the Commission at the time of its creation, and no funding for staff assigned full-time to the Commission was allocated in the 113th or 114th Congresses. So this is why we are asking for $230,000 be designated for professional staff and expenses for the Commission in the FY 2018 Legislative Branch Appropriations Bill. Now, we see a couple of ways in which our request could be accomplished. One would be to support the Commission through the reserve fund that is included in the Appropriations Bill, in the expectation that funding for the Commission would be regularized in the following year. Another option would be to insert a new provision in the Legislative Branch Appropriations Bill, similar to what is done with the John C. Stennis Center for Public Service Training and Development. One question that you might have is, why not pursue this request through the Committee on House Administration and the Committee on Foreign Affairs? This is a reasonable question that we would answer in two ways. First, we believe that funding for the Commission should not come at the expense of the standing committees. The Commission deserves funding, but we are not seeking to harm other committees in the process. Second, Mr. Royce, as Chairman of the Foreign Affairs Committee, has previously expressed his view that the Commission should be funded independently by the committee. Mr. Chairman, since the 1970s, the Congress has led support for fundamental human rights and fundamental human freedoms as a core part of our U.S. foreign policy. As we look around the world today, the need for a strong congressional voice on human rights is greater than ever. So during the last Congress, the Commission held 22 hearings and over 40 briefings on topics ranging from religious freedom to the protection of civilians in Syria. In the absence of dedicated funding for professional staff, the Commission did this work and served its bipartisan membership through a rotating patchwork of temporary fellows and volunteers. The modest request we are making today would allow each co-chair to hire dedicated full-time professional personnel to reinforce the Commission's expertise and further amplify Congress's important voice on human rights and foreign policy. So anyway, I thank you for your attention to our bipartisan request, and would be willing to answer any questions or hear any comments.
Jim, thanks for your testimony this morning. We appreciate your comments, and I think it's a very intriguing proposal you brought before us. 22 hearings, that's a lot of, I mean, you guys have been pretty active on the committee. Can you tell the committee some of what those hearings have generated, what some of the goals are, what you hope to achieve through the Commission?
So part of what we hope to achieve is a greater awareness and understanding of the importance of human rights in our foreign policy. And we're not a legislative committee, so we don't report on legislation, but the Commission has been responsible for inspiring legislative initiatives such as the Magnitsky Act and the Global Magnitsky Act. Basically, it was formulated to put sanctions on human rights violators in Russia. It has now been expanded worldwide. But it's also to give a forum to human rights defenders from around the world who, quite frankly, with the added attention, oftentimes it means that their lives are spared, that they can actually operate as human rights defenders in countries and not have to worry as much about being jailed or imprisoned. We've done hearings on religious freedom, on the situation in Syria. We've done hearings on challenges to indigenous communities around the world, Sudan, China, Russia, you name it. Unfortunately, there's not a shortage of human rights crises in the world. But I'd like to also add to the record a letter signed by a number of human rights organizations and advocates, ranging from Freedom House to Amnesty International to Jewish World Watch, who have all advocated that who support our request, that it would be helpful to have permanent professional staff that is dedicated to this, that can develop the institutional memory that can serve not just those of us in this Congress, but Congresses in the future.
Without objection, we'll add that to the record. Assuming we could find the resources to support the committee's work in addition to the resources that the Foreign Affairs Committee has utilized. These would be new dollars that we'd be expending. What are the technical changes that would need to occur to allow this to happen? Is there authorizing legislation that needs to pass? House rules need to change?
Yeah, I mean, you know, the commission has already been, I mean, the kind of the contours of the commission have already been, it's already authorized, it's part of the rules, you know, package that we pass every year. You know, I mean, our hope would be that, you know, that the funding would be appropriated and the Foreign Affairs Committee could then administer the funds, so it wouldn't, you know, we wouldn't have to.
Do you think this committee could solely do the work that needs to be done to
Yeah.
allow this to occur?
Right.
And you're under the Foreign Affairs umbrella right now. I'm assuming they're supportive of
Right.
this
Yeah.
endeavor.
Yeah, I mean, I think what they would not want is, you know, to, you know, have their current staff, you know, have this, you know, have the funding for these positions come out of their current allocation. I mean, they have a full plate of
Right.
activities they need to deal with, and I understand where they're coming from, and I certainly, you know, I mean, that's why we're saying that, you know, I mean, we've established this commission, it's been bipartisan, it has worked. We had 113, how many members in the last Congress?
103 last time.
103 members of the House are members of the commission in the last Congress. You know, we're continuing to solicit new membership in this Congress. And I should tell you too that, you know, I sit on the Rules Committee, I'm on the Agriculture Committee too. What amazes me about the hearings by the commission is that they are always well attended, not only by members, but I mean, we fill the room. So there's great interest by staff and by advocates who care about human rights, and I think it's been a net positive to the work that we do here.
Okay, great. Mr. Ryan? Okay. Mr. Molinar, you okay?
Thank you.
Anything to add?
I think I submitted this letter to the record. I think if there are any other questions, just get a hold of us.
Jim, appreciate your testimony today,
Thank you.
and my staff will look forward to working with you to try to make this proposal a reality.
Thank you.
Okay?
Means a lot.
Great.
Thanks.
Thanks so much. Appreciate you being here. Okay, committee, we're now going to turn our attention to a second subject this morning, and I think we have three folks that would all like to testify regarding the same subject. So our intention is to bring all three folks up. So that'd be Mr. Tauber, Kosar, and Schumann, right? Again, gentlemen, welcome to the committee. We appreciate your appearance this morning. I know that there's a very important subject regarding transparency in government that you'd like to testify to the committee about this morning. And so each of you will be recognized for up to 5 minutes. You certainly don't need to use all of that time, but ideally you would all testify, and then we could ask questions of any of you or all of you. So maybe I'll just start with Mr. Tauber. Welcome to the committee, and please begin.
Sure. Thank you for having me here today. My name is Joshua Tauber. I'm the founder and president of Civic Impulse LLC, which is the company behind the website govtrack.us. Each year, around 10 million individuals use our free tools to research and track legislation in the United States Congress. Our users include journalists, legislative affairs professionals at small businesses, federal and state agencies, legislative staff here on the Hill, advocates, teachers, students, and of course, members of the general public. And my testimony today on supporting public access to legislative information is really on their behalf. I'd like to begin by commending the subcommittee for its support of important programs in the last several years that have allowed us to bring more accurate and timely information to our users. And I'll mention some of those programs, and the rest will be in my written testimony. The House of Representatives Bulk Data Task Force was formed 5 years ago as a joint effort of the Government Publishing Office, the Library of Congress, and the Clerk of the House to create a database of all legislation before Congress that could be shared in bulk with internal and external stakeholders. You can think of it like a spreadsheet of bills before Congress with hundreds of columns about dates of floor votes and so on, and that spreadsheet remarkably didn't exist beforehand. The task force's goal was ambitious and last year the task force delivered. The new data has allowed us to disseminate the most accurate information yet about the status of pending legislation before Congress using official data published through modern means. The launch of Congress.gov by the Library of Congress several years ago, and its continual improvements since its launch, using what's called agile methodology, is an example for the whole legislative branch and how to get the most out of a modern information technology investment. Congress.gov has greatly improved search results compared to the old Thomas.gov, and it won't be long now before Congress.gov surpasses the functionality of my own organization's website, and I look forward to that day. Lastly, the House Administration Committee's Legislative Data and Transparency Conference, which takes place each summer here in the Capitol building, is a unique opportunity for outside stakeholders like GovTrack, my organization, and inside stakeholders like the clerk to learn about each other, which makes all of our efforts to keep the public informed most effective. I also want to take a moment to commend the staff at the House offices and legislative branch agencies that I named who have done remarkable work in producing accurate, durable, and timely information within the constraints that an institution like the House of Representatives requires. The subcommittee's support for these programs, which provide public access to legislative information, ensures that accurate information reaches the American public. And my users love that information. They want to know what's going on by reading the bills, checking the votes, maybe watching some hearings like this one. But let me be clear, it's not about playing gotcha. Our users are professionals who have a job to do, including your staff who use our website. Our users are also regular Americans who feel they also have a job to do, which is to vote in elections, to stay informed, and to learn what it takes to sit on your side of the table as a future, maybe, member of Congress. My job is to take the information from Congress, the official record from you, and bring that to the widest audience I can and teach them how Congress really works, so their relationship with you is a meaningful one. So to continue the subcommittee's support, I will make the following recommendations for the upcoming fiscal year. 1, create a public advisory committee on legislative transparency for stakeholders both on the outside and on the inside to engage systematically on this issue, including but not limited to access to data. 2, make the bulk data task force permanent and fund the participation of the offices and agencies that are members of the task force. 3, support congressional publication of other important information, especially in a structured data format like XML, including floor amendments, committee votes, the biographical directory, aka BioGuide, the non-confidential reports of the Congressional Research Service, and other information that furthers an open and transparent Congress. Continue to support efforts to modernize the House's information technology systems, especially with respect to the work of committees and efforts to connect constituents with their representatives. Cultivate the legislative branch's in-house technology talent, which already exists, as other parts of the government are already doing, because information technology now plays a role in everything we do, including how I read this testimony. And 5, increase House staff levels above their current historic lows, so that the House has sufficient capacity for policy analysis, oversight, and constituent services. Direct the Congressional Research Service to report on how staffing levels impact the House's capacity to function, and make that report public. I would be glad to discuss these topics further and tell you more about how the work of the House on public access to legislative information translates into a stronger democracy. Thank you for your time and the opportunity to speak today.
Thank you for your testimony this morning. Mr. Schuman?
Thank you so much, Chairman Yoder, Ranking Member Ryan, Congressman. Thank you so much for having us come and speak to you today. It's great that you're having open testimony. As you know, this is the first time in 6 or 7 years since 2011. I was here the last time around. I've gotten older. I now have to wear glasses, but we're glad to be back. And I associate, of course, Josh's Dr. Tauber, Josh's too modest. His website has 800,000 people looking at it on a monthly basis, and he is responsible for literally millions of people having access to information about what Congress does. It's really phenomenal work in what he's done with other folks. So I'm here on behalf of Demand Progress, but I'm actually representing 42 organizations from across the political spectrum. It's a lot of sort of unusual allies. You don't often see the American Civil Liberties Union and Americans for Tax Reform agreeing, or CREW and Cause of Action. My organization, Demand Progress and Freedom Works. We have a lot of sort of unusual allies, a lot of reporters groups, all 3 library associations, all in support of public access to CRS reports. So I used to work at CRS Kevin's going to talk a little bit about how 25 former CRS employees also have endorsed public access to the reports, and unlike me, they have a combined 570 years, I think, experience at the agency. So this has, pretty broad bipartisan support. And I just want to be clear about what we're talking about. We're talking about the general distribution reports that are made available on CRS's internal website. There's 1,200 or so new reports every year and 2,400 or so that are updated. We're not talking about confidential reports. We're not talking about the 3,100 confidential memoranda. We're not talking about the advice that they give your offices. We are only talking about the reports that are generally available to congressional offices and that Congress, as a routine matter, makes available to the public. And Kevin will talk about this more, but through committee reports, member offices, of course, release them online as well. And there's a number of services that make them available either for free or at cost. But there's a problem with the current circumstances that we have now, which is that the most recent reports are not sort of uniformly made available to the public. And you have a number of negative consequences that come from this. One is that when the public looks at the report, or journalists, or lobbyists, or academics, they don't necessarily know that they have the most recent report, which means that they don't know they have the most recent data. So sometimes questions that your office will get, or news reports, or otherwise, will rely on older information. And this is a problem. You also don't know whether you actually have an authentic report. Since the Congress itself published some of them, but many of them, since there's no sort of central place for them, you don't know if someone's tampered with it. You don't know if there's something that is different in it. So it is important to have sort of access to these things generally. And sort of this public mission is something that Congress has embraced, that this committee has embraced. Josh talked a little bit about the bulk data task force. I mean, you guys are making available all the bill summaries and bill text. You're making available roll call votes on the floor. This, of course, is being live streamed. There's a lot of information about the legislative process that's made available to the public. The Law Library of Congress publishes CRS-like reports, and of course you can get GAO and CBO reports. So this is not a new thing for this body. We're asking simply that it be placed in the context of CRS reports. And I should just say, maybe parenthetically, that the House itself, as part of its 114th and 115th rules package, has embraced the idea of expanding public access to legislative data, access to this type of information as data. That the Senate has had a policy since 1998 of encouraging members and committees to release their reports online. So this is not exactly new. And there was an effort in the late 90s that was only discontinued, I think, last year, to make a service available to member offices where they could publish the reports on their sites as well, that the Appropriations Committee had supported, but since no members actually knew that it existed, eventually I think it was sort of discontinued. There are issues that have often raised over time about public access to the reports. The testimony goes into all the different questions that have been raised. I'm not going to rehash them here unless folks want to go into it. But I should say that there's bipartisan legislation from Lance and Quigley and Senators McCain and Leahy that address all of these concerns. The final point that I want to make is about cost. So one of my organization is one of many that republishes the reports. As of today, we had 8,671 CRS reports on our website. It cost us $4,000 to build the website and to make it available. So when we're talking, and we've made our code available online so anybody else can do it at basically no cost. So when we're talking about like the expense of doing this, it's not particularly hard. And we're not just republishing them. We're redacting the names, the email addresses, and the phone numbers from all the staff, from all the reports. We are adding disclaimer language around copyright. We are indicating and describing that the reports are intended for Congress, and that as a product for Congress are geared towards that audience. We continue to update as we receive the reports from congressional offices. So with that, I'm happy to really talk about any of these matters or questions that folks might have. I want to say both to the chair and ranking member, we've had great meetings with your offices. Your staff have been very kind to take time to talk with us about all these things, so thank you. And with that, Kevin.
Mr. Kosar.
Thank you, and bless you for doing this open hearing. I know you guys are extremely busy, so to take the time is really, it's great. Thank you for permitting me to testify today. My name is Kevin Kosar. I'm the Vice President of Policy at the R Street Institute, a free market think tank here in Washington, D.C. I also co-direct the Legislative Branch Capacity Working Group. bipartisan gathering of experts and congressional staff who meet monthly on Capitol Hill to discuss ways to reform Congress to meet the demands of the 21st century. Our aim, as we like to say, is to make Congress great again. Now, I'm here today to encourage the committee to make.
Already great. I mean, it's a
Greater. Well, I think so. There's this public opinion problem.
I've seen those.
Yeah. So I'm here today to encourage the committee to make public access to CRS reports more equitable. In short, lobbyists and others within the Beltway can get copies of CRS reports much more easily than the average member of the public. This is not fair, as it is the public whose tax dollars support CRS. So in my limited time, I'm going to make 2 points, which I didn't make in my written testimony. I figured I wouldn't want to be redundant. First, no harm can come of making the reports more equitably available to the public. I spent more than a decade working at CRS as an analyst doing nonpartisan research for Congress and as an acting research manager overseeing the work of 10 of our analysts. I love the agency, as do the other former and retired CRS employees who signed on to the letter. We've 570 years of collective experience at the agency. Some of those folks started back in the early 70s. I only left in 2014. We're all convinced that this is the right thing to do and that no harm will come of it. The second point I'd like to make is that Congress has always made CRS reports available to the public, but it's been in an ad hoc way, and it's become an increasingly disorganized way. For example, I have a copy of a 1979 CRS annual report, which lists dozens of CRS documents that were published by Congress as public documents in the form of hearings. They're included in the hearings as committee prints, introduced into the congressional record. And when those are printed as those documents, as you all know, they go out all over America to the federal depository libraries and elsewhere. So Congress has been doing this for decades. It's not as if CRS reports have been secret. When the internet arrived roughly 20 years ago and hit Capitol Hill, we still have Congress releasing even more CRS reports to the public. Committees, individual members, various offices within the 2 chambers put the reports online. Congressional staff frequently give them out to interest groups, constituents, lobbyists, people who ask for them, who know to ask for them, which explains why, if you go online, you will find thousands upon thousands of CRS reports scattered all over the place. Some on government websites, some on private websites. They're everywhere. So to conclude, what I and other former CRS employees are advocating is that Congress continue to publish the reports, but to do so more consistently. By my light, it makes sense to have, say, GPO do it, since its job is to make authenticated government documents accessible to the public. And GPO has previously published CRS reports, like the Evolving Congress, which was a very thick volume on Congress that it published in late 2014. And over the decades, it's published CRS reports in the form of committee prints and the documents I previously mentioned. Nobody is here is advocating that CRS's mission or fundamental nature be changed in any way, shape, or form. Nobody's asking CRS even have to really lift a finger. All we're saying is that Congress, you've been publishing the reports, why not publish all of them, and to do so in one central place and on a consistent basis. And we think it'd be a great service to the public. And with that, thank you.
Gentlemen, thank you for your testimony this morning. I think this committee remains committed to finding ways to open up transparency and make the work of Congress more accessible to the voters and constituents that want to know what's happening here. And as I think Mr. Schuman mentioned, or maybe it's Mr. Tarver, that they want to know the votes, the debate. They want to know what's happening because they want to, I think, be informed. They also want to be able to hold their elected officials accountable. So I think the testimony you're bringing today is important to me. I know it's important to Mr. Ryan as well and the whole committee, so we thank you for being here. This issue's been, I'll deal with the CRS issue maybe my first questions for the folks, and Josh, if you have thoughts on it, you can jump in as well. This issue regarding CRS reports has been kicked around for a number of years. I think committees voted on it. Certainly you mentioned there's legislation to do this, and I think there are, we have heard a couple of different objections, and maybe you could address those objections straight on. I think one of them has been that the widespread dissemination of these reports might increase pressure on CRS as groups or lobbyists try to influence the research and analysis that comes out. So knowing the impact of this research and knowing that the report's coming out, it could, and some have argued, lead to putting more pressure on the CRS workers themselves, might influence their work. And I guess as a follow-up to that question, would you see a need for the CRS to establish a public inquiries office to manage an increase in outside questions, opinions, and influences? Or do you see this issue really as something that is a non-issue that wouldn't actually happen?
May I take first cut?
Yeah, please.
Well, as we all know, the most politically interested and active individuals are in this town for the most part. They're the ones who come and lobby and they advocate, et cetera, et cetera. They've had access to CRS reports for years, and I can tell you, my experience, they have no effect. No effect on the research that CRS does. I should also mention that it was about 5-6 years ago, WikiLeaks dumped something like 6,700 CRS reports. It was a big to-do. Washington Post ran a story. You would think that this dump would all of a sudden have created some sort of public pressures on CRS. I was there. Nothing happened. I was worried. Other people who worked there were kind of like, wow, what's going to happen? Are people going to start calling us up? No, didn't happen. So I've just seen no empirical basis for this anxiety. Especially if we redact the information, so people are not contacting analysts directly, that would even further diminish. But like I said, there's tens of thousands of CRS reports out there already with analyst contact information. My old phone number's on reports that are floating around out there from 5 years ago. And it's just not been a problem.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, I would just add, I mean, as Kevin said, the ship has sailed. Like, you can go and buy reports online, $20 a pop, from services that have been making them available for 15 or 20 years. So if they were going to, and the people who are most interested in the contents of the reports are going to be the members of Congress on either side of the issue, who of course have great incentive to pressure CRS if they had concerns, and it's going to be the lobbyists. And those folks are already the ones who are in the mix. So broader public access is not going to change those circumstances. And to the extent that there is a concern that people are going to start, emailing the folks at CRS, one, that would already have been happening, but we can take off the email addresses and the phone numbers. We've demonstrated that it's really fairly easy to do that, and that would solve the problem. The second question had to do with the Public Inquiries Office. So there's sort of two pieces here. One is that it is not entirely accurate to say that CRS doesn't make reports available to folks outside of CRS. If you're a journalist and you know the report number, current CRS policy is that they'll provide the report to you. If you're in the executive branch or in the judiciary, they often will provide it to you if you ask for it. So the reports, they're already responding to some sort of level of inquiries. But that being said, there should not be a Public Inquiries Office. All the reports should have language on it that says that the reports are prepared for Congress, that they are done, you could take the statutory language and sort of stick it in there. And that would be sufficient. I don't think that, if people have questions about CRS, they should talk to their members, which is what they do now.
Yeah, and I just wanted to add, it would make CRS's job a lot easier dealing with the reporters who come, the interest groups who sometimes ring up when they see a report, and members of the public who occasionally find the agency. It'd be so much easier if all you had to do is respond, all reports that CRS has published that have been made available by Congress through gpo.gov/CRS or something like that. It would make lives a lot easier. Instead, right now you have this kind of fish not fowl sort of situation where, I'm sitting in my office at CRS years ago and somebody would call up from the media and say, I have a 2011 report you wrote about the Postal Service. Is there a more recent version? I'm going to write a story about it. Yes, there's a more recent version, but I can't tell you. People in the academic community who reach out to CRS experts, they can't get copies of the report, not without an individual having to go through this Baroque process of responding, going through management and calculating the odds of whether this could have negative consequences, and if this is in the interest of the Congress to release it. It would make life so much easier if CRS could probably staff down their public affairs office to one person whose job would be to say, go to gpo.gov/CRS. That would be it.
Okay. Mr. Ryan?
Well, their argument is they would have to beef up their
Mhm.
public relations department in order to handle the phone incoming calls on this issue. And you're saying, no, go to the website.
There's a publicly facing website. All reports that Congress has permitted to be available are there. Hang a phone.
What's your response with regard to the protections that they would have through speech and debate? Maybe their research, would that be, in your outline, would that be protected? Would they be protected?
So a couple things. One is that reports that are being released to the public, so Senate has this longstanding policy of encouraging members and committees to release reports to the public. So, if there's concerns about public availability of CRS reports, since it's already longstanding policy to release them, making them available on a general basis wouldn't change the circumstances. And what we would advocate is that you would go and have GPO publish them all. So instead of having most of them, you'd have all of them. It's not going to change the level of speech or debate protection, because speech or debate is really about my advice to you. Like, I'm an attorney in the American Law Division. You call me, ask me for legal advice, I give you confidential advice. I don't talk about it to nobody, right? You can release it if you so choose. I do not. General distribution reports that are available to the thousands of people on Capitol Hill that are routinely released by member offices to the public, it's a different kind of issue. And when Stan Brand, who's the former counsel for the House of Representatives, looked at this in 1998, when we first started debating this issue a long time ago, he thought that the arguments around speech or debate were not strong, and that to the extent that there are concerns, which he didn't think were valid, but to the extent that there were concerns, you could simply add disclaimer language saying that just because we're releasing these reports, it doesn't mean that we are waiving speech or debate clause protection. You put that into the law. So the extent that that is an issue, you can legislatively solve it in that kind of way, and that would more than, that goes way beyond what you would need to do. But if there is that concern, that is an easy way of addressing it.
Talked about the WikiLeaks dump. In the dump were the names of the members of Congress who requested the reports in there, or was it just the name of the analyst and researchers?
The only thing that appeared was the name of the analyst who had written the report. And I should note that the vast majority of reports that get written by CRS are done at the analyst's instigation. It's when members request written research on a specific topic, they typically request that it be delivered in the form of a confidential memo. That way they can consume it and decide what to do with the information, or in the form of an email, or if they want it in person, it'll be delivered that way. So there's no way, all the CRS reports that are floating around out there, there's no indication in any of them as to whether they were asked for by Congress or any particular member. There's no identifiable information whatsoever in them.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say there's a nomenclature problem. So CRS reports, on one hand, could refer to all of CRS's products, including the confidential stuff, but that's not what we're talking about here. We're only talking about the reports that are generally distributed to all congressional offices at once. And as Kevin said, the vast majority of these reports are done at the initiation of the employee. They're not done in response to a request. So there's going to be no information about who requested, because most of the time nobody's requested in the first place. So the reports are the general distribution one. The memoranda are the ones that are just for a particular office, and it's the memoranda that are confidential. CRS usually talks about them all as products, which is even more confusing. But the easiest way to think of it is the reports are the general distribution ones, and the memoranda are the ones that are confidential advice, if that helps.
I should add that the reports are only a very, very small percentage of the total written products and research loads that CRS does. So, again, this is not fundamentally changing the nature or affecting the nature of the agency in any way, shape, or form. And certainly nobody would advocate making available confidential memoranda or anything like that. It's just the reports which are already out there.
Okay. That answers my question, because our charge here is to, in some ways, protect members who are kicking around ideas, learning, and we don't want stuff to show up on a commercial for something that I was thinking about, not that I was necessarily advocating, and to in any
And I mean, I can speak for the 42 organizations that signed on, and Kevin can talk to the 25. Like, we would oppose anything that would go after the confidential advice that help you guys think through this process. We would actively oppose it. We would be banging down your door saying this is a bad idea. We would not in any way want that information to be available, unless, except in circumstances where the member offices themselves choose to release it, which they sometimes do. But that should be your option. It shouldn't be anybody else's. So,
Appreciate it.
yeah.
All right, yield back.
Yeah, I think to Mr. Ryan's point, I think there's just been concerns raised that would have a chilling effect, and the members would quit requesting research because they might get targeted for the research they requested. So I appreciate Tim's questions on that. Mr. Milinar is good. Gentlemen, do you have anything else to add?
Thank you.
Joshua, we didn't get a chance to ask you a question. Let me ask you, what's your top priority? If there's one thing we would do this Congress on the things that you outlined, what should we focus on?
The next thing is floor amendments. There's very little good data on what amendments are being considered, what the text of those amendments are. So if you go to congress.gov, for instance, there's not very good information there, and it's hard for me to get that onto my website.
Okay.
I'm with him on that. I don't really know what the floor amendments are sometimes.
Thank you.
I think it's your side that's bringing a lot of them.
Well, the role reversal.
Right. Gentlemen, thank you for your testimony today. We really appreciate it.
Thank you very
Look forward
much.
to working with you on a number of these issues.
Thanks.
Appreciate it.
All right.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Make this easier for you.
Yeah, oh, hey, thank you. Okay, our final witness this morning is Keith Kuberschmidt.
Yep.
All right, 2 for 2 on that.
Nice.
The CEO of Copyright Alliance, who's going to testify this morning regarding the Copyright Office, modernization of that. Sir, you have 5 minutes to testify before the committee, and then hopefully we'll have some questions for you. So, welcome and thank you.
Okay, thank you, Chairman Yoder, Ranking Member Ryan, Congressman Milinar. Thank you for the opportunity to testify before you here today to discuss the funding and IT systems of the U.S. Copyright Office. I am Keith Kuberschmidt. I am the CEO of the Copyright Alliance. The Copyright Alliance is the unified voice of the copyright community. We represent the copyright interests of over 1.8 million individual creators, as well as over 13,000 organizations across a spectrum of copyright disciplines. The individual creators and organizations that we represent rely on copyright law to protect their creativity, their efforts, and their investments in the creation and distribution of new copyrighted works for the public to enjoy. Core copyright industries add $1.2 trillion to the U.S. economy and employ 5.5 million American workers. The Copyright Office plays a pivotal role in that copyright ecosystem by registering creators' works and recording documents pertaining to those works. It is essential that the Copyright Office be able to rapidly adapt to ensure that it is able to offer the tools and resources that all the all the users of the office's service demand, and that Congress have a direct line of communication with the Copyright Office so the office is answerable immediately and directly to members and their staff. Unfortunately, neither of those exist today. Many of the challenges the Copyright Office faces can be traced back to the fact that the Copyright Office is within and under the direction and supervision of the Library of Congress. As a department of the library, the office is obligated to use the library's IT systems. The office does not have its own IT infrastructure. It also lacks authority over its own budget and staffing because of its current structure. For many years, the Copyright Office has sought to modernize, but has been unable to do so because its priorities are subordinate to those of the libraries. If the Copyright Office is to successfully modernize, it is essential that it be given autonomy over its budget, over its staff, and over its IT to carry out its mission going forward. Greater autonomy over IT, budget, and staffing recognizes the difference between the mission and infrastructure of the library and the Copyright Office, while retaining the historical connection between the library and the office with regard to deposit of unregistered works. Greater autonomy will enable the Copyright Office to implement a more modern, more robust copyright registration and recordation system that will facilitate additional business investment and entrepreneurship, leading to long-term economic growth and cultural benefits. In 2015, the House Committee on Appropriations directed the Register of Copyrights to develop a detailed plan on necessary IT upgrades with a cost estimate that are required for a 21st century copyright organization. Last February, the Copyright Office met this obligation by providing the committee with a provisional IT plan which provided for a lean, nimble, results-driven, and future-focused cloud-based system that could be implemented within 5 years at a projected cost of $165 million. We thank the appropriators for their support of the Copyright Office efforts to implement its own IT plan, and we also appreciate the language in the draft explanatory language accompanying the omnibus spending bill that states, with regard to copyright-specific IT systems and larger copyright issues, it is expected that the library continue to defer to the expertise of the Register of Copyrights. We also strongly support funding of the office through increased appropriations. Appropriations are an important and proper source for funding for modernization, since the public is the ultimate beneficiary of copyright information retained and disseminated by the office, and by extension of a modernized copyright office. Raising fees should be the last option. Since copyright registration and recordation are voluntary, and additional costs or barriers will serve as a disincentive to participate in the system, to the extent any fee increase is warranted as a means of increasing the office's budget, that increase should be a shared responsibility that is borne by all users of the Copyright Office, be in conjunction with improvement in existing services and the addition of new services, and be invested directly into the copyright system infrastructure. We also recommend that the Copyright Office be given the necessary authority to build a reserve account from the user fees it collects to help the office deal with government shutdowns, other emergencies, and fluctuations in incoming fee receipts. We also support the Copyright Office having access to its funds over multiple years through a multi-year budget cycle or a revolving fund. I want to thank the subcommittee for its interest and support in modernizing the Copyright Office, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Keith, thanks for your testimony this morning, and I think we share your interest in modernizing the Copyright Office, making it more useful for the creative artists that are in this country that utilize its services. Probably most Americans don't know that it's in the Library of Congress, and I'm sure that dates back to long before any of our time. And clearly, Congress agrees in terms of the modernization. I think there's a $10 million increase in total budget authority coming into the next, in the 2017 omnibus bill that we're looking at this week. And it increases flexibility using offsetting receipts and prior year funding for modernization. So to your point, I think we're headed in the right direction. I guess my question for you would be, in terms of your members and those who use the Copyright Office, why having a separate entity would allow it to modernize quicker? You might just kind of dive into why, is it really the crux of that issue there, having it under Library of Congress versus having it its own entity? Why is that such a significant difference for your members in particular?
I don't know that that is such a significant difference. We would like to see the Copyright Office retained within the legislative branch, whether that's as an independent agency or within the library itself. Okay. What we ultimately want to see is greater autonomy, right? The Copyright Office needs to have autonomy and authority over its IT systems, over its budget, and over its staffing. With regard to the IT system in particular, what the library needs in terms of an IT system is very different than what the Copyright Office would need. The Copyright Office is dealing with things like financial transactions, making sure hard copies of deposits are associated with applications, needs more robust security, things like that frankly necessarily aren't in the interest of the library, and therefore what we're pushing for and what the Copyright Office needs is greater autonomy, especially with regard to IT, but also with budget and staffing.
Can you describe for the committee how that autonomy, in whatever form it might occur, whether it's an autonomous entity or just more autonomous within the Library of Congress, can you describe how that would change the interactions between those seeking to copyrights, the artists, the folks you represent? What's the practical reality of those autonomous changes?
I mean, so let me give an example, and then I'll talk further about your question.
because I think my example will bear this out, that modernization isn't just helping the copyright creators and copyright owners, but it also is in the best interest of the public, entrepreneurs and others and what have you. If you look at the Patent and Trademark Office, for instance, they have an office where, just like the Copyright Office has, where you can record transfers of ownership. So if I have a patent and I transfer ownership in that patent to you, I can record that at the Patent and Trademark Office. Similarly, if I have a copyright and I want to transfer that ownership and that copyright, I can record that at the Copyright Office as well. Well, the Patent and Trademark Office, because it's got a very good IT system, is able to process about 500,000 of those recordations on an annual basis. And they have about 10 to 12 people, I believe it is, running that small office of recordation. The Copyright Office, on the other hand, has about the same amount of people. I think it's about 12 full-time employees. But yet they are only able to process 11,000 of those recordations. And the answer comes down to IT. Now, what the Patent and Trademark Office is able to do with those recordations, they are able to process them within 24 to 48 hours and have them up online for people to see, the public to see, right? And entrepreneurs to say, hey, I want to license this, and contact the person. The Copyright Office, it takes them about 18 months to process and make it available. That is a long, long lead time. Okay, so this benefits not only the individual creators, but it would be in the best interest of the small, certainly small creators, but also just the public and anyone who has an interest in copyright and uses the copyright system, I think. So, in terms of why why that's important, I think if you also look at the Copyright Office's interface. There can be vast improvements in the interface to make the process of registration more simplified, more efficient, more effective, and hopefully that will lead to perhaps more registrations. People have shown frustration with the registration system, and the last thing we want to do is put a roadblock or an obstacle in front of creators who want to register and deposit their works with the Copyright Office, so I think that's what the improvement in the IT system would do.
Okay. Mr. Ryan?
So just so I understand this, so you're sharing the IT with the library, and there's how many people in the IT department that?
I don't know the answer. I don't know the answer to that. I know that the Copyright Office is subordinate and must rely on the IT system. I don't know that, I'm not sure of this fact, but I do not believe that the Copyright Office has their own IT system. I believe they rely entirely on the library's IT system.
So we would have to pull out X number of IT workers, or add on a number of IT workers to help make this happen, to give you the autonomy that you need.
Yeah, like I said, I'd have to look into that, because there may be, right now, there may be some employees that work with the library at the Copyright Office, but I'd have to look into that and get back to you.
So one of the issues too is that there's money that's being saved, right, if you're sharing services.
Yeah.
Is there any way to strike the balance between the current system and giving you the autonomy you need, knowing that we're protecting the taxpayer money too here?
Mm-hmm.
By sharing the services?
Yeah, I think there absolutely are. I mean, we support shared services. Ultimately, though, this should fall on the Copyright Office, and should defer to the Copyright Office, is expertise and assessment of where that makes sense, where it makes sense to share services. Let's say, for instance, in HR, that may make a lot of sense for it to share an IT system and share services with the library. But in terms of the actual sort of day-to-day activities of the Copyright Office of registration and recordation, it likely doesn't make a lot of sense. That doesn't also mean that there shouldn't be some level of shared services, but probably not with the library. Maybe there's other government agencies out there that it makes sense to share those services with. So we're not opposed to shared services at all. We just think at the end of the day that should be the sort of the Copyright Office's decision as to whether that makes sense, and if so, how that makes sense. And the other thing I would be concerned about, if you're talking about shared services with the Library of Congress, that sort of the library not dictate the terms of those, for those shared services, and not charge the Copyright Office, because at the end of the day, that might be sort of a de facto diversion of fees, right? There might be budgets set out for the Copyright Office, but then these shared services would get diverted, and the Copyright Office has a fiduciary duty to its users, to those creators who pay for registrations and pay for the services of the Copyright Office.
How
So,
much are the registration fees?
I know the registration fees take up about 2/3 of the Copyright Office's budget, and so I think that's around 43 million or so. I could, numbers here someplace, but it's about, I think it's about 43 million or so. So about 2/3, maybe a little bit more of the fees that are generated by the Copyright Office are used for its budget. And the hope is that as you modernize the office, they'll be able to provide more services and be able to charge service fees for those services, and be able to, while they'll never be I don't think there'll ever be a time where they can be fully fee funded. Certainly the Copyright Office can hopefully maybe generate more money to put back into modernization.
And how would that happen again? By
Well, so let me,
quickly getting things up online?
yeah, so let me give an example, go back to the example I mentioned with the PTO and the recordation system. The Patent and Trademark Office was able to, they had a fee that they were charging for this recordation. They were able to zero that out. They don't charge people to file their recordations anymore. Well, you could still do that if you're at the Copyright Office, and like I said, to generate some money. If all of a sudden you've got an IT system that works, and people, there's an incentive for people to record those transfers, then that makes sense. But perhaps a better example would be if you're talking about the ownership database. You know, the Copyright Office has this ownership database where they collect information that's on the registration form today. And that information is very, very difficult to access, not only from a time perspective, a time lag perspective, but the example, if you were to go on to the Copyright Office website and search, for instance, The Godfather, looking for the Mario Puzo book, or maybe perhaps the movie, you'd probably flip through about 3 or 4 pages before you found it. You'd find all these other references, and that comes down to the IT system not being what it should be. So at the end of the day, if you're able to improve the IT system, I think what you'll be able to do is perhaps create new industries, spur the economy, create new jobs, create more licensing opportunities. I think there's great opportunity here if the office is able to modernize, and especially its IT system.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Molnar?
Thank you. Thank you for your testimony, and I just wanted to follow up a little bit more on this topic you've been discussing. And you made the comment, fees should be the last resort. And talked a little bit about trademarks and patents. And what strikes me, and other ideas come to mind, like an FDA approval of something where you have some new product that someone wants to protect, and it seems that the user fee idea would be kind of the most reasonable for that, rather than a general appropriation. And I'm just curious as to why that's different in the case of copyright.
Thank you very much for the question. It's a fabulous question. It's very different because copyright owners get rights, or creators get rights in their creations the moment that work is created and fixed in a tangible medium. That's different than patents and different than trademarks. In patents, for instance, you can invent something, but you have no rights unless you go to the Patent and Trademark Office, you apply for it, and you receive a patent. With copyrights, you do not need to register. So, and you still have rights. There are certain benefits to registration, but you still get rights in your creation if you don't register, and that's an international obligation. That's pretty much the rest of the world abides by those same rules that don't require registration.
Where
So,
were those rights established? I mean, where did that become that unique right for copyrights?
that's going back to the 1976 Act, and more significantly, like I said, the Berne Convention, which is an international convention. I think there's about over 200 countries that basically said you cannot attach a formality to the granting of these copyright rights, and a formality would be registering with the U.S. Copyright Office. So what happens is if you were to increase the fee, that would work as an obstacle to people actually registering, and it would really be come back and bite you, right? So if you end up increasing the fee so that the Copyright Office has more money to work with, people don't register as often, so you actually have less money perhaps to work with. And that's especially true when you're talking about the small creators that, for instance, the Copyright Alliance represents, the small individual photographer, the individual software coder or songwriter who really doesn't have a lot of resources, and they're trying to make that decision, do I register, do I not? And there are certainly some benefits to registration, but if an increase in the fee starts to become a roadblock, and it is a little bit right now, to be honest, we've heard from our members, if it becomes more of a roadblock to registration, that's gonna come back and haunt us all, I think.
And what are the benefits of registration? I mean, if it's already a right that's protected, why would I register?
Well, so number one, I mean, in order to get into federal court, so if you wanted to actually sue somebody here in the United States, you would have to register beforehand in order to get statutory damages. So you can still get actual damages, but in order to get something called statutory damages and attorney's fees, you would have to register ahead of time. There's also several other benefits, including obviously having your name on a piece of paper, look, I own this copyright. But at the end of the day, you've got creators who are weighing those, especially smaller creators who, as a totally separate issue, have very difficult time getting to federal court because they can't afford federal court. That becomes a big issue. You think of those benefits, are those benefits worth it? And they make a cost-benefit analysis. So if you change that calculus by increasing the fees, it's a very good chance that you might get a blowback and just not get as many registrations and therefore not get as much money coming into the Copyright Office.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Good. Anything else? Keith,
Thank
thanks
you.
for your testimony
you.
this morning. We look forward to discussing this with you further. The only thing I would ask is, do you have a specific proposal that you'd like the committee to look at related to how you would see this all laying out?
In terms of
the creating the autonomy and changing how the...
Yeah, we can provide that. I mean, we've got information up on our website, and we've also filed comments with the House Judiciary Committee and testified before, so we're happy to provide that
You might visit
information.
with committee staff about how you
Absolutely.
sort of see this functioning in the best way, and then we could sort of look at a proposal that gives us maybe something tangible to weigh.
Yeah, okay.
And I'm sure you have it, and you can send it over. Appreciate
Okay,
it.
excellent. Thank you.
And with that, Keith, thanks for your testimony. The committee stands in recess until Wednesday, May 17th at 10 a.m. when we will hear from the House of Representatives concerning the FY 2018 budget request.